Warpugs, climate change is a thing. Climate change is a concern. But if you're the one controlling the climate change, aren't you the one in control of everything? Guys, it's Reggie, and he's dominating the environment to save humanity. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out, but I'm pretty sure he's about to show us. Now, the thumbnail for this one is a couple of toxic barrels, and you guys know how I feel about toxic barrels in the middle of a lake, where there's fish and sharks and other wildlife, and the potential to be mutated into 30-foot-long abominations of our worst nightmares. I personally don't think it's a good idea, but to each their own. Reggie's links are going to be in the description down below. And if you find yourself enjoying this, and just let me know in the comment section down below. I am kind of tired this morning, Warpugs. I do apologize. We're going to jump into this, though. Reggie, explain to us how humanity goes on in the middle of the worst climate catastrophe that we can actually manage. Let's go.
A game, a lifestyle, and undiagnosed neurodivergence. In this new and exciting conveyor belt simulator, you play as Frumpy Woman, the world's greatest climate change accelerationist, on a personal crusade to increase shareholder value through total planetary annihilation. I know that sounds fun, but it's actually a debilitating mental disorder, because this game is like heroin, but without the needles, and it has taken over my life. I think I had a wife and kids before Satisfactory. However,
you know what? If they get in the way, they're no longer needed, aren't they?
I can't be sure, because I've replaced all of my formative memories with the optimal build order of smelters to maximize my chances of a woman never talking to me again.
There you go.
That's alright, because this game isn't about women, it's about the environment. And the only thing the environment fears is us, because we will utilize stunning innovations such as complex train networks, armies of kamikaze drones, and unregulated pollution to commodify every known resource on this godforsaken world. Can we successfully achieve planetary domination?
Yeah, but what about the Na'vi? What are we going to do about them? What are we going to do about them? I personally recommend a detachment of Space Marines.
Or will I get really confused by my conveyor belts and die in the process? There's only one way to tell, but first, capitalism.
Let's go.
Hypothetical situation. You're home alone eating a salad when suddenly a gang of IRS agents break into your apartment and start harassing you. It's been 14 years since you filed your taxes, and they're threatening you with late payment penalties. Honestly, it's not looking good.
No.
However, all of this could have been avoided with today's sponsor, GamerSupps. This company sells delicious and highly effective energy supplements. By ingesting even a single picogram of their patented formula, you will have the requisite strength to beat the IRS to death. Taxation is theft, and I don't want you to be victimized. So please get your GamerSupps today using
I've had that, it's good.
code Reggie for 10% off. Now, back to the video. Here we are.
GamerSupps. Get caffeine. Conquer world. Code Reggie. Description down below. Sponsor me, GamerSupps.
A lone pioneer ready to manifest destiny all over this jungle hellscape. Our primary goal is to reach tech level 9 and beat the game. However, we just started, so we are technologically in the Paleolithic era, confined to such rudimentary tools as mining picks and tasers. Here, our survival depends on brute force and our propensity for deforestation.
Alright.
That being said, I set up base camp at the top of this incredibly inconvenient mountain and spent the next 2 hours collecting fistfuls of grass to power our biofuel generators. Now, before you classify this as an avant-garde landscaping simulator, I need you to understand.
I was about to say that people aren't that stupid, but they really are that stupid to sit there and use a chainsaw on the end of a rope.
That you're not actually playing Satisfactory yet. Everything prior to unlocking coal power is simply a skill test to weed out the gotcha players and mentally insane. Note to self, remove tautology. Once you've got somewhere between 1 and 2,000 leaves, you can process them into biofuel and start building your empire. The first few times you attempt this, you will build for about 5 to 7 hours before realizing you've already fucked everything up. Because your iron ingots are phasing through each other, you have 15 constructors all running at 9% efficiency, and your power grid violently explodes whenever you turn on the toaster oven.
Death wish!
Apart
Nice.
from damaging your self-esteem, this experience should also teach you that as your industry grows, organizing the products you manufacture becomes increasingly difficult, which is why I believe in mega warehouse supremacy. Rather than exposing my latent brain damage by storing materials in multiple places all over the map, I propose a singular massive warehouse that will contain every resource in the game. Now,
see, this is using your brain. I am, the one reason I don't think I do well at games like this, even though this looks really interesting to me and I'd like to play it, is the sheer fact that I need to be able to keep things organized in my head. And, considering I'm ADHD squirrel, this becomes increasingly hard the more stuff you put in there. So, EVE Online, when I played EVE Online, I had a problem with doing industry because there were just so many moving parts. But, something like this, I think I'd have a seizure.
when it comes to mega factories, we have two main considerations.
Okay.
Do we want to acquire girth by building horizontally,
Girth.
or should we utilize the vertical domain? I feel strongly that anyone who builds vertically should be put on a list and medically dissected for science.
Okay.
In fact, the average vertical building enthusiast will arise every morning at exactly 5 a.m. as if diabolically possessed. They will then proceed to the bathroom where they splash 24 molar nitric acid in their eyes and chant the name of a local politician in the mirror while stabbing a voodoo doll for 13 hours straight.
Okay.
After that, it's time for supper. The vertical builder drops to all fours and prowls the streets for prey, consuming any children who aren't able to run faster than 65 kilometers per hour.
Okay.
Honestly, it's pretty gruesome stuff. So we're going to be building horizontally. This is going to take a lot of concrete. So let's get to work.
Let's
I
go.
start by locating all limestone nodes within a 1 kilometer radius, set up some automated mining drills, and create a pipeline of conveyor belts to transfer everything to a concrete factory, which produces 75 bags per minute. We also need iron and some copper for this project,
Right.
but our power grid is kind of maxed out right now, so we have to resort to these shameful and repugnant portable mining devices. Using portable miners is kind of embarrassing.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
It's like smoking crack in a public park. Sure, everyone has to do it at some point, but if I
Yeah.
catch you doing it for more than 10 minutes, I will report you to the police and I will take your place. Anyway, I swallowed my pride and gathered enough resources to begin construction on the mega warehouse.
Okay.
So let it begin. Well, there it is, the pinnacle of ultra-utilitarianism, a floating rectangle. Now
Yes.
it's time to start filling it up. The goal is to have every
The sounds activate the almonds I'm in my brain and give me a happy. I'm just saying.
resource enter and exit this facility. So, for example, the iron ore comes in from these elevators, gets stored in these containers, leaves on this conveyor belt,
Okay.
comes back as iron ingots, stored again, leaves again, back as iron plates, stored, leaves, and finally returns as reinforced iron plates.
Reggie and I would get along in one respect. Me and him have a similar brainwave when it comes to organizing things kind of like this. I need things to work like this. I can't have machine going to machine going to machine. I just can't do it.
You may look at all of this and ask yourself, is this physically painful? The
Yes.
answer is yes, but it's necessary. I have a concept of happiness, and every step towards it makes me increasingly suicidal. I
Oh.
don't let that stop me though, because I believe in the process.
Yes.
And you should too. The Mega Warehouse will take care of you, as long as you play by its rules. For
Mhm.
example, there will be a temptation to build some kind of ladder or ramp to safely reach the ground, but any
Don't do that. You don't want to do that. Jump off. Broken legs are the wave of the future.
real warehouse enthusiast will simply launch themselves off the top floor while using the industrial machinery below to cushion their fall.
Exactly.
Also, you may notice that occasionally animals like to spawn or wander into the warehouse. I regret to inform you that there is no effective way to get rid of them, but there is a really fucking funny one. I'll conclude this rant with one final thought. If you want your warehouse to be artistically satisfying or even beautiful, you're going to need to buy cosmetic items using Awesome Shop tickets. Don't worry, this isn't an in-game cash shop. It's actually much worse. To gain Awesome Shop tickets, you'll have to acquaint yourself with the Awesome Sink. You spend hundreds of hours carefully producing each item in your factory, and this is a machine that grinds them to dust in exchange for company fun tickets. There are two ways to view this interaction. The Awesome Sink is either a New Age religious icon, which requires ritual sacrifice, or it is the hypothetical home invader that forces you to choose which one of your kids will be shot in the head. Fortunately, I've got about
That's a massive difference.
10,000 kids, and they're all named Reinforced Iron Plate. So the decision isn't too difficult. By this point, our industry looks like this. We have 4 iron extractors pulling out 480 pieces of ore each minute, which we are refining into various products at one of several micro factories across our territory. We've also got the same thing happening to the north with copper, and all of it is being pumped back into the warehouse for organization and storage. You'll know you're doing this correctly if your warehouse starts looking like some terminally ill creature, being kept alive only by the 55 life support tubes sticking out of its grotesque body. Now that we've got all that sorted out, we can start working toward our first mate.
The fun part is when you have to reorganize the warehouse and you either do it successfully or you have an existential crisis, start a YouTube channel, and stick with it for 5 years.
Your milestone. You see, 3 weeks ago, Gabe Newell crash-landed on this planet.
Oh, hey, Gabe!
His obscene mass is destabilizing its orbit. So our primary objective is to create an industrial elevator capable of airlifting him back into outer space. I already started the elevator, but each phase of the game requires us to add more supplies to it. And in reward, we will unlock new technologies. Primarily, we're looking for coal power generators, hypertubes, and blueprint designers. But to unlock that, we have to send up...
We're still in biomass? Are we still in biomass right now? We're still in biomass right now.
50 smart plates. They take a pretty long time to make, which is why I recommend the oldest trick in the book. Leaving your game running while you go to the grocery store. By the time you come back, you'll either have all 50 plates, or your power grid will have exploded. In my case, I got the plates and sent them up the elevator. If you found anything about that challenging, I recommend you buckle up, because comparatively, the next milestone is going to feel like you're being hit in the head repeatedly with a car battery. That being said, let's move on to phase 2. Now that we've unlocked coal power, your primary psychosexual desire, above eating and even breathing, should be making a power station as quickly as humanly possible. We're just going to need 2 things. Water, which should be easy to find unless you started in the desert, in which case you deserve what's happening to you. And the final ingredient, coal. My closest coal node is about 1 kilometer away. So it's time for us to create the Great Trans-Saharan Coal Pipeline. It went a little like this.
I'm telling you, the music in this is giving me a happy. Nice.
Right, that was not very fun, but we got the coal. Let's run it down to the water extractor, build a few power generators, and call it a day. Setting this up is a huge step forward, because it's all completely automated. Our manual biofuel generators walked so that the coal power could run. Actually, it's more like they dragged their body across the floor in agony, but either way. Now, when you look at your power grid, you're going to think 2 things. First, JFK wouldn't have been a very good boxer. He didn't have the head movement. And second,
why?
Wow, look at all this power. I am set for life. The latter observation is what we call a delusion. But for now, we can live in its blissful ignorance. With that taken care of, I set up a few steel production facilities and started unlocking new tech for us. First, we got the blueprint scanner. It allows us to save specific builds inside it and then copy and paste them anywhere we want. This is terrific, because setting up storage containers in the warehouse is very tedious and stressful. I think the closest analogy would be diffusing a bomb that's strapped to your own forehead. In previous versions of the game, you could exploit the blueprint scanner by placing it at the bottom of a lake, building a water extractor inside of it, and then pasting this blueprint on dry land or even floating in the sky, effectively creating an industrial dehumidifier and providing you with an indefinite source of water anywhere in the world. But the legal team at Nestle patched this bug out of the game, and the person who popularized it was found dead with 47 self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Never forget.
You gotta be careful. you've got to be very, very careful in life not to wind up in this kind of situation. You know, just use your head.
Forget what they have taken from us. Apart from that, we also unlocked hypertubes and created a hypertube nexus to facilitate high-speed travel between the warehouse and various factories and mining sites across the map. Now, if being sucked through a pneumatic tube at 140 kilometers an hour isn't exhilarating enough for you, you can stack accelerators to turn this into a fucking cannon. I'm serious. You can achieve faster than light travel using this technique. Oh, by the way, the next milestone is the production of 1,000 smart plates, 1,000 versatile frames, and 100 combustion engines. I really hope you've been doing that, because I haven't. And according to my math, it's going to take about 5 hours. So I set up 5 assemblers to start production and took some time to reflect on my journey thus far. How's the base shaping up? Well, I'd say this is the most tangible expression yet of my heretofore undiagnosed autism. Much like a greasy 400-pound strongman, it is best described as functional, antithetical to beauty. And that's okay, because somewhere after the 20-hour mark, people who aren't criminally insane stop caring about 90-degree angles. Also, by the 20-hour mark, you should notice you've become supernaturally good at multiplying by 60 and dividing by 2. I intrinsically know that a saturated Tier 2 conveyor belt being split 3 times can supply 35 iron rods, 40 iron plates, and 45 wire production at 100% efficiency, assuming a 35% power slug. Not because I did the math, but because it is ingrained on every neuron in my frontal lobe. After several hours...
When you start dreaming about this stuff, that's when you've really got it bad. I've had that happen where I started dreaming about numbers and logistics. And that is not the dream I wanted back then. That is not the dream I wanted whatsoever.
Of mumbling to myself about conveyor belts, we have finally produced all of the materials for the next phase of the space elevator. And after blasting them into orbit, we've unlocked tech tiers 5 and 6.
Nice.
Notable research includes train networks, jetpacks, and most importantly, oil production. This is big. Your existence prior to coal power was that of a single-celled organism. Post-coal power, you are maybe an infant or a rabid animal.
Yay!
But access to oil is where you become a man. Right now, the power grid is starting to struggle, so we need to begin harnessing the might of oil-to-fuel conversion. My scanner indicates the closest oil nodes are 900 meters away, in such stunning environments as jungle and wet jungle. The topography of these areas is not suitable to my fascistic desire for order, and if you feel the same way, I recommend using cluster munitions to defoliate the landscape and explode all of the wildlife.
There you
After
go.
I was done doing that, I built a few oil extractors.
Screw the Navi. Screw their tree.
And then I built a few more. We now have more crude oil than I can physically transport, so I just start drinking the stuff, which allows me to enter a state of enlightenment. Soon, the capitalist pig dogs will attack us for what we have built. I am not hallucinating. Iran is very powerful. Praise be to the Prophet. Where was I? Ah, yes. So I began pumping hundreds of liters of crude oil into several refineries to produce plastic, rubber, and liquid fuel.
Yes.
These are all very valuable resources, and we need to get them back to the warehouse for storage. If you align yourself with the term chronically underdeveloped man-child, you may decide to just create a 4-kilometer stack of conveyors all the way back. But I suggest using what the game provides, which is why we're making a train station. I put one end in the jungle to load our supplies onto the train. The other end is on top of the warehouse to unload the goods. And everything in between is floating through the sky, because I'm a hack. If you
Yes, just take advantage of pure fucking magic. PFM is a thing. It was a thing when I was in the military. It continues to be a thing throughout life. Utilize PFM to your utmost.
If you want to achieve something similar to this, I recommend familiarizing yourself with mergers and smart splitters. Think of the mergers like Martin Luther King. He died for your right to desegregate your conveyor belts. Very useful. And the smart splitters are like a certain Austrian painter. He died for your right to resegregate your conveyors and send them to forced labor factories and industrial furnaces. You can probably imagine some issues with that one.
God! Oh, that was horrible. That was bad. Okay.
Not to worry, each smart splitter has been preemptively lobotomized with an AI limiter to prevent it from gaining sentience and annexing Czechoslovakia. With all of that sorted out, we were able to use a series of ceiling-mounted conveyor belts to deposit each item into its appropriate container. Meanwhile, the train is also transporting hundreds of liters of liquid fuel each trip, which we're pumping all the way to this freshly built power station. Each one of these produces 250 megawatts. That's equivalent to nearly 4 coal power generators. I take a moment to appreciate fossil fuels.
Yay.
I worship the oil. I am euphoric. Hydrocarbons are God, and I will disseminate his presence into the atmosphere at 3,500 parts per million. Amen. Something about inhaling all that carbon dioxide and arsenic made me feel refreshed. Let's potentiate this high by reconnecting ourselves with nature.
Yes.
Exploration is an important part of the game because there are vast and glamorous landscapes for you to experience. For example, I traveled to the fungal lowlands where I discovered several majestic creatures. I was so taken by their beauty that I couldn't help but electrocute them with a taser and run them down in my truck.
Nice.
Marvelous.
Nice.
I'm sorry, that was a bit of a fugue state. What I'm actually doing here is looking for precious artifacts such as other people's hard drives. We can occasionally find them crash landed randomly on the map. Now, you think if someone was to go through the trouble of encrypting their hard drive, launching it to an alien planet, and crashing it in the middle of a desert, they would probably have some pretty heinous stuff on there. But these things are actually very useful. Each one contains an alternate production recipe. So instead of creating computers with circuit boards and wiring, you can achieve the same result by combining aluminum foil, a handful of pencil shavings, and a generous amount of your own saliva.
You know what? I think if we found ways to do that in the future, we would be all much better off. Spitting on your computer could improve performance and give you that edge over your competition in gaming. Unfortunately, we are held prisoner by Big Chip, and that's all there is to say about it.
Really quite helpful. However, even better than that are the alien artifacts you can discover throughout the map. Most of the time, they're protected by violent animals, and if you pick them up, a strange voice will whisper vaguely threatening things to you.
Me pretending to be asleep so everybody at the party beats me off, but actually I just wanted to get beaten off.
But once you get past that, they're great. For example, Summer Sloop can be stuffed into your factories to allow for item duplication. Meanwhile, Mercer Spheres are used to create interdimensional storage depots. Anything I put into this gets uploaded to the cloud, meaning I don't have to have it in my inventory to be able to craft or build with it. So obviously, I stole as many of these funny orbs as I could and used them to augment my warehouse, thus giving me access to every resource in it at all times. I will admit, the probability that I actually developed interdimensional storage is quite low. Meanwhile, the chance that I'm just shoving all this stuff up my ass is fairly high, but I try not to think about that. Feeling rejuvenated.
Well, do you feel impacted? If you don't, you're fine.
By these developments, I decided it was time to take on the next phase of the space elevator. This one requires 2,500 versatile frames, 500 modular engines, and 100 adaptive control units. The production of these items took at least 15 hours and pushed both the factory and my sanity to their upper limits. Every conveyor belt.
Okay, he's way past the point where I would have thrown in the towel on this. He is way past that point. My sanity doesn't quite wrap around this. Look how much shit he has in this. My brain would collapse. I'd be done.
Every megawatt of power. It was all dedicated to these shitty little items. By the end of it, I was completely exhausted. But as I watched the parts fly into low Earth orbit, I felt a certain glimmer of satisfaction. A hopeful optimism for the future. I thought, it's going to be okay. I was wrong. Because immediately after completing that phase, I look in the top right to see what they wanted next, only to be greeted by the following demands: 500 assembly director systems, 500 magnetic field generators, 250 thermal propulsion rockets, and 100 nuclear pasta. Assuming you're not completely psychotic, you probably have no idea what the fuck any of that is.
I don't.
So allow me to break it down for you.
Go for it.
To produce these items, we will need the following: 1,000 crystal oscillators, 125 turbo motors, 125 fused modular frames, 375 motors, 500 electromagnetic control rods, 625 modular frames, 625 modular engines, 1,000 AI limiters, 1,100 heavy modular frames, 1,500 high-speed connectors, 1,875 heat sinks, 4,200 computers, 5,000 circuit boards, 5,000 automated wires,
55 burgers, 55 fries, 55 tacos, 55 pies,
7,500 steel beams, 8,200 aluminum casings, 11,500 liters of nitrogen gas, and finally, 14,000 pieces of plastic. It's hard to fully express how devastating this discovery was, but allow me to try. You are 10 years old, and it's Christmas Eve 2004.
Please go ahead and attempt, because
Walking home from the child labor factory. Your feet are frostbitten because your mom keeps selling your shoes so she can afford more medical inhalers. But that's alright, because it's almost Christmas and Dad even left to go get some eggnog. He's been gone for 4 years. But I'm sure it's just the traffic. You go to bed that night dreaming of Santa Claus and the wonders of this magical time of year. And then you hear it. Someone's in the living room. It must be him. You rush into the room and there he is. Santa Claus.
Merry Christmas. Have you been a good boy?
For the first time in years, a smile spreads across your face, only for Santa to expose himself to you and ask you to pound his ass.
Fuck Santa's ass. I didn't need that. I didn't need that. I didn't need that. I didn't need that. Oh God, I need bleach. Reggie, what the fuck, man? Oh my God, I need bleach. I need bleach. Oh, that is... I didn't need that. My God, man. What did I do to you to deserve that? Oh, I'm all discombobulated now. That was horrible. Where's my glasses? There they are. Hold on. Oh my God. I don't need any more of these sounds either, but I'm gonna get them. Ugh.
It is in this moment that you can no longer deceive yourself. Mom is a drug addict, Dad's never coming home, and Santa is a pervert. Safe to say, you're a little disappointed.
Right.
But you are only 5% as disappointed as I was when I saw the next phase of the space elevator.
Okay.
I hope that helped. So I spent a few hours soaking
that
around,
helped.
not really sure what to do about this problem, and then it came to me. In times of antiquity, divine clerics would ingest hallucinogenic compounds to gain clairvoyance and find solutions to their problems. Now, I don't have any crystal meth, but I do have a coal power plant. So I just stood on top of it and inhaled deeply until I achieved my revelation. The real problem here isn't the laundry list of random bullshit. It's that we're not polluting the planet hard enough. We need to double the power grid. Then I'll be able to scale our factories enough to build all of this useless garbage. First things first, our current supply of fuel is insufficient, so it's time to innovate. Take some coal, smash it up in a machine, and then dissolve it into your fuel supply. You now have turbo fuel.
Nice.
Use this to double your power grid. That's good, but we can go even further.
Let's go.
We just need some nitrogen gas. Mother Nature hides her sweetest fruits deep underground, so we build a hydraulic fracking machine to pound her into compliance. Now take your nitrogen, mix with water, a handful of iron, and you've got nitric acid. Combine
Why?
Combine that with turbo fuel and congratulations, your entire power grid is now running on fucking rocket fuel. We're producing 300 liters of the stuff every minute, and after doing the math, I realized I could theoretically build and run 70 generators off of this supply. So obviously, I did. As I choked my way through a cigarette-flavored cloud of smog, I wondered if I had gone too far.
No.
Do I really need 70 generators? The answer is no. 75 is a much better number. With that taken care of, we can begin production. First items, 500 assembly director systems and 500 magnetic field generators. Both of these require high-tech electronics, such as supercomputers.
Right.
So I set up a mega factory to produce the necessary components and supplied it via the train network.
Yay!
I would be very proud of this accomplishment if my manufacturers weren't all running at 18% efficiency. You see, assembling electronics is highly precise work that requires a specific ratio of ingredients. Meanwhile, trains are the sledgehammers of logistics. Sometimes you get what you need, and sometimes you'll get 20,000 Caterium ore, 2 pieces of plastic, and a death threat from the conductor. For many reasons, this is suboptimal. So I engaged in my classic problem-solving technique, which is trying to actually solve the problem for 2 hours, believing I solved the problem, realizing I didn't, getting unreasonably upset, and then eventually coming to terms with my new identity as an 18%er. Although I did...
I just scream in frustration until, like, one of two things happen. My vocal cords tear, or, I wake up the neighbors and have to call the cops for a wellness check, in which case, nothing gets done.
It eventually built a drone helipad on top of the warehouse, and I've been using that to transfer supplies between our factories, which has helped significantly. So that takes care of the director systems and field generators. Next is the thermal propulsion rocket. I want to go on record saying I hate the thermal propulsion rocket. It takes forever to assemble and has literally no use other than being recycled, which makes it the most complex piece of garbage in the entire game. Anyway, I set up a factory to produce the rockets. In order to reach it, I just have to shoot myself out of this cannon. If I don't have enough speed, I end up falling into a poisonous jungle and asphyxiating. But if I have too much speed, there's a 50% chance I smack into the side of the space elevator and die instantly. I think it says a lot that this was the most enjoyable part of building the rockets. The final item we have to manufacture is nuclear pasta. In order to achieve this, we require an ungodly amount of copper powder, some funny little cubes, and a high-speed particle accelerator, also known as a cyclotron. In the realm of nuclear physics, these are kind of a big deal. Allow me to explain. 2,000 years ago, alchemists were considered very intelligent and respectable members of society. Their goal was to transmute base ingredients such as lead into precious metals like gold. To accomplish this, they tried everything, ranging from complex chemical reactions to fermenting their own semen in a jar. I'm serious. 900 years before you were drowning Isabella in your degeneracy, a Swiss
Why would you do that? The Doom guy's gonna come for you!
alchemist was boiling his cum to get rich, but it never worked. Fast forward to modern day. Now we have cyclotrons. These machines use oscillating electric fields to accelerate and fire charged particles at target materials, which on an atomic level transforms them into new elements. So instead of spending 2,000 years coming in jars, all these morons needed to do was build a $50 million particle accelerator to bombard the nucleus of a mercury atom with high-speed protons until it underwent nuclear spallation and physically transformed into gold. What a bunch of idiots. What does any of that have to do with pasta? I have absolutely no clue, but
he's a poster mouse. He's a little poster mouse.
That didn't stop me from manufacturing it, and after about 4 hours, we finally had all of the items necessary to advance to the last stage of the game. Now look, I understand that whole process didn't seem too bad, because I spent most of the time talking about gooning and killing myself. But the reality of the situation is that we're over 75 hours into the save, and this game is not so slowly driving me insane. The best way to appreciate my psychological degradation is to examine the progression of the warehouse. At the start, everything was clean, organized, and even color-coded. Around the middle, you can see some strange aesthetic decisions, but nothing crazy. And now by the end, it has devolved into absolute anarchy. Storage containers have been deployed randomly, hypertubes are phasing into the floor, and most of the conveyor belts are floating through the sky as if the entire building has been possessed by a poltergeist.
Nice.
Oh, and at the very end of the warehouse, I even set up a manual production line to make parts for the space elevator, which is socially acceptable in Phase 1, but by Phase 4, it is the satisfactory equivalent of living in your car at the age of 47. By this point, I had abandoned my final vestiges of humanity.
He has returned to monkey in his brain, and he's dragging all of us down with him.
Exist solely to manufacture. I assembled my conveyor belts in what could best be described as a state of drug-induced mania. Nothing makes sense anymore, and above all else, the idea of 100% efficiency has become an abstract concept, like workers' rights or domesticating the British, that despite our best efforts will never actually be achieved. So you could say I had some mixed feelings by this point in the game. But either way, I gathered up all the parts, shot them into orbit, and took a long, depressing drag on a cigarette as I prepared for our final assignment.
What is it?
A new day is upon us, and with it, new possibilities. Phase 5 offers exciting technologies such as this, and this. Absolutely amazing. Now, if the past 75 hours have taught me anything, it's that our factory is not good. If we want to survive the next 75 hours, we're going to need to make some major changes. This was when I decided to implement the DoD mandate. It stands for double or die, meaning we're going to double the production of everything in this entire factory. Every plate, every screw, every computer, every goddamn ingot, or we will die trying. Our ability to accomplish this
Dude, no.
breathtaking and daring effort will depend largely on one critical factor.
What's
the
that?
Availability of this slug. Power slugs are sentient and immobile creatures, terrible combination by the way, found all over the map. Their name is derived from the fact that they contain a lot of power, and if we jam one of them inside a building, it makes it go very fast. Basically, we're performing an excruciating mass-to-energy conversion on a living creature to make our factory produce like 50% more iron rods. Imagine.
Don't act like this isn't something that we do. We would do this. We would do this gladly. If we could do this right now, who am I saying? We do this right now. Happily.
Imagine for a moment you are that slug, peacefully living your life in the jungle, and then you hear about some deranged factory worker who wants to melt you down in a furnace. Quite concerning. But it's alright, you live in a vast world and the chances of him finding you are very low. Wrong. I've invented a radio that tracks you specifically. Under any other circumstance, this would seem like the imagined reality of an unmedicated schizophrenic. But for power slugs, it's just another Tuesday. After about an hour of slug hunting, I had accumulated over 100 and began jamming them into every building I could find. This was a good start, but we need to go further. So I started expanding the factory. Copper smelters doubled. Iron ingots doubled. 800 screws per minute, try 2,000. And of course, I had to double the oil refineries too. Overhauling our infrastructure was a great step forward, but we also need to utilize new technologies, such as the Tier 6 conveyor belt. Most conveyor belts use a conveyor belt, but this one utilizes magnetic fields to move each object.
PFM.
Don't worry though, this is by far the most dangerous version yet. I did the math on this. It's moving at 85,000 meters per hour. I used to work with a guy named Tom. Tom tried to grab something from the Tier 6 conveyor belt, and in the blink of an eye, Tom turned into a fresh coat of paint on the ceiling. So whatever you do, don't listen to those losers at OSHA, because if your conveyor belt has a time to kill metric, then you know you're doing something right. By utilizing these conveyor belts and several obscure scientific devices, we were able to begin production on the final set of parts for the space elevator.
Wait a minute. Ballistic warp drive? That just sounds concerning, okay? That sounds very World Eater.
All of our hard work, we're just barely able to afford the production of these items. And according to my math, it's going to take another 12 hours to assemble them. So I did the only reasonable thing. I left my computer on overnight and went to sleep.
There you go.
I woke up the next morning and made my way to the computer to check our progress. In one word, it was beautiful. We had produced almost everything we needed, and with a few more hours, we could be finished. Just as I was about to award myself Employee of the Month for the daring maneuver of falling asleep at work, tragedy struck. A notification telling me one of our batteries had just gone offline. My eyes widened as I scrambled over to investigate the power grid, and that's when I realized I fucked up really bad. Our entire power grid relies on rocket fuel, which itself requires nitrogen gas. Nitrogen gas which is delivered by this drone. Unless a blockage occurs on one of the conveyor belts and stops the bottles from reaching the drone. Not sure when this happened, but I do know the only thing holding our entire factory together is a couple dozen batteries I built at the start of the game. And it's only going to last for about 10 more minutes until our power grid gets nuked back to the Stone Age. I spent the first 5 minutes finding and clearing the blockage, but it's going to take a few minutes for the nitrogen to get back to the base. So I started setting up some nuclear reactors to buy us some time. I don't know if
nuclear reactors to give you time. That's a statement.
You've ever woken up at 8 a.m. and been forced to build a nuclear power plant within 5 minutes, but it's a little overwhelming. So I'll explain the basics. Nuclear power plants offer the most power of any generator in the game. However, they also require the most mental fortitude, because the production lines are long, convoluted, and everything is radioactive. On that note, some people will try to tell you that uranium might damage your DNA and maybe give you cancer in 10 years, but I will tell you what really matters. Do not pick up the plutonium fuel rods, because they'll kill you right now. In fact, that's kind of an issue with nuclear power in general, because each generator produces highly radioactive waste, which needs to be disposed of. There are several ways to
launch it into the woods. If it hits one of the slugs, it'll increase their ability to power. Profit.
Accomplish this. The first method is that you could befriend one of these lizards, at which point you gain the ability to feed him tasty snacks. Instead, you're going to feed him 200 barrels of toxic waste and then put him out of his misery with a piece of high-velocity rebar. Upon death, his inventory is deleted, and you have become a monster. Alternative method, the Cochrane Cannon. Create a hypertube cannon with 23 accelerators, equip a hazmat suit, and fill your inventory with nuclear waste. Then, enter the tube and become a hero. The cannon will rapidly accelerate you past the speed of light, at which point your physical form will painfully disintegrate, thereby deleting everything in your inventory and getting rid of the waste. Oh, and
there you
if
go.
it wasn't clear, you die. If neither of those options are appealing to you, you could...
Yeah, but that's not really, that's not really a big deal, when you look at taking out all the waste. If you could fill an entire landfill, launch yourself into the air, and delete your entire inventory that way, I mean, would you not do it? Don't you care about the environment? You would.
Pursue the official method, using a blender to turn the waste into non-fissile uranium, then turn that into plutonium pellets into plutonium fuel rods, plutonium waste, fixonium, and eventually into fixonium fuel rods for an environmentally friendly power plant. Or you could just do what I did, dump all of it into the ocean and slowly irradiate the water table.
There you go.
Back to reality. I did manage to get a few nuclear power plants online, but as I was heading back to the warehouse for more supplies, I was greeted by the most deafening noise in the entire Satisfactory universe. That is, the sound of my power grid exploding, followed by complete silence. Well, shit. Without power, everything in the entire factory grinds to a halt. No manufacturing, no drones, and most importantly, no hoverpack. This was a lesson I learned the hard way. Fixing this won't be easy, because all of our generators require fuel to start, and to make fuel, I need power. Therein lies our dilemma.
Right.
So we're going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. I disconnect the coal power generators from the main grid, and then restart them. We've now got a secondary power grid with enough coal to last about 20 minutes.
Good.
I connect this to the rocket fuel blenders, and they start refilling the pipes with fuel. I'm going to wait until they're full, then we're going to try and turn on the main power grid. If we're lucky, it'll work. If we're not lucky, I'm going to jump headfirst into a Tier 6 conveyor belt.
There you
After
go.
about 15 minutes of production, we ran out of nitrogen, meaning whatever fuel we've got in these pipes is all we're getting. So this is the moment of truth. I made my way over to the power box and flipped the breaker. In that instant, 100 hours of gameplay flashed before my eyes, and when I returned to reality, I realized our plan worked. The power grid is back online. Now we can finish the game once and for all.
There you go.
I set up one of my classic floating sky factories and began construction on the final part for the space elevator. I wish I could say this was exciting or even amusing, but I just spent 3 hours staring at a quantum encoder and pretending I knew what it was doing. This took so long that halfway through, the seasonal Christmas event started, and Santa Claus began airstriking us with presents.
Yay!
God only knows what he put in these boxes.
No,
It's been a
no,
total
no,
of
I don't need that mental image
125
again.
hours, and we finally have everything we need to save the planet by sending Gabe Newell into orbit.
Yay!
So let it begin. I loaded up the elevator, set the fuel injection level, adjusted the gyroscopic stabilizers, and launched that fat bastard into the sky.
Bye, Gabe.
From here, he climbed aboard this spaceship and sent himself through a wormhole to ensure he could never develop Half-Life 3. Goodbye, Mr. Newell. You will be missed. Well, that does it. We've won. But as
Yay.
I watched Gabe's corporeal form twist through the fabric of space-time and into an infinitely distant cosmos, I felt a certain emptiness. After 125 hours, our goal has finally been completed. Yet, each machine continues to mutter its symphony of productivity. That's when I realized there is no rest for that which may be replaced. No profit-sharing for the humble miner. No celebration for the industrial mixer. Only labor. By some vector, whether electrical or biochemical, we are animated, and our life is reduced to mere numbers. We are not builders of legacies, we are pawns in a game where the only objective is the relentless accumulation of more. More profits, more productivity, more assets, all while our spirits remain empty. I stand here surrounded by a cornucopia of manufacturing. It can produce thousands of any item in the world, and yet it can't produce happiness.
Oh.
However, it can produce enough TNT to blow up the entire map. So, fellas, this has been Reggie, wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yay! Warpugs, I want you to look at this. At a certain point, you begin to lose your sanity in games like this. Hold on. Where are we at? look at how much stuff you have to do. Like, oh my god. Not that. Hold on. These montage shots where he shows the factory itself. Hold on. Look at that. This is why I can't play games like this. This is why. Because I cannot keep this kind of stuff organized in my head. I would lose my chicken fried mind trying to keep all this stuff together. As far as what's going where, why, when, and how. This would make my brain melt down completely. If this is the kind of game that appeals to you, then hey, by all means. But something like this would hurt. And hurt very badly, very fast. I do well in games where it's you don't have to take that many steps. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but I don't think that I am. This is why, like, I love city builders. I love stuff like that. I don't know if this is something that I would enjoy. I do know it would hurt my brain after a bit. Granted, that's not hard to do. Oh, wow. This isn't even the best shot, to be honest. Like, this isn't even the best shot that he did of this entire facility that he has. Look at that absolute madness over here. Warpugs, stuff like this. I know there's a lot of satisfaction in this. I know, especially when you build something that works at peak efficiency and everything. I know the satisfaction has got to be high. I say I don't understand why people would play something like this, but then again, I really do understand. If you build something that produces at top efficiency, that is a peak dopamine hit right there. That is a peak dopamine hit. Warpugs, I'm going to have all of Reggie's links in the description down below. Go check him out. After 100 hours of this stuff right here, oh my god. Leave a comment down below if this is something that you guys like to see. And honestly, guys, one of these days, I'm going to wind up trying a game like this. Probably when I get the new computer. I don't know when I'm going to do that. I've been talking about getting a new computer for over 2 years now. We'll see. We'll figure it out when that happens. Until then, Warpugs, I'll catch you guys next time, okay? Join as a member of Patreon for early access. Check the links in the description below, and yeah. Later, Warpugs.